Hi, welcome back to the Healing Grief, Healing Trauma Summit. I'm Stephen Berkeley, and I'm here with Tanja Diamond, a specialist in nervous system regulation and trauma recovery. Tanja is also a life and business strategist, a Tantra lineage holder, 2 times TEDx speaker, TEDx event organizer, speaker coach, and 5-time international best-selling author whose visionary work in healing and optimizing the nervous system using very simple techniques has helped over 82,000 people and 22,000 animals in 60 countries. Welcome, Tanja. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
Thanks. I'm always a little taken aback on my intros. I don't know why. I mean, I wrote the bio, but it's always like, wow, really? Okay.
Now, we had in your bio originally that you are an autistic polymath. I took that out because I wanted to talk about it now, because I wanted to ask you, I didn't want to just leave it out there. I wanted to ask you, what is an autistic polymath and why is that important for us to know?
Great question. Well, we all have heard of autism, though most people don't really know that it doesn't show up like what we see in movies all the time, which is somebody who's nonverbal, who's just sitting in a corner rocking. That's what people consider autistic. And so I am autistic in all the flavors that it brings. And the polymath part is that my brain works kind of like a supercomputer. And I read 25,000 words a minute with an 85% comprehension rate. And I'm a deep diver into subjects I love. So if something interests me, here's that autistic part. I focus hard on it, deep dive into it, and usually come out with a master's in it or a PhD in it. And so my friends call me Google. So polymath, I love the human condition, like what makes us happen? Why is the universe happening as it is? What's the connection between nature and people, and how do we heal fast? So that's led me to being certified in hundreds, maybe thousands at the point of different modalities.
Now, you've had extensive training in various disciplines. So to become the healing practitioner you are today, which certifications did you have to get? Or, I don't know, give me all your certifications.
I couldn't. I don't remember them all. We'd have to go down a list and go look at I do have a list that's being compiled of all of the certifications I've done, because literally to do what I'm doing doesn't require any certifications. But because I deep dive into things, what could we call Reiki? We can call aromatherapist, naturopathic medicines, Bach flower remedies, sound healing, visual healing, neuroscience, cognitive therapies. If you name it, I've probably dove into it if it has to do with the mind. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, so I have a heavy chemistry and biology background, as well as medical background. And I read medical abstracts for fun. So I'm that person, like, oh, what is this? I've also certified in internet marketing since 1992. I've been making money online. One of the first women to do that wasn't in the porn industry.
So you're the kid in class that I would probably go to and say, could you please help me with this? I don't get it.
If you liked me, but most people didn't like me. So no.
No, why is that? So far, I find you delightful. Why don't people like you?
I was the kid in class that was always 2 years younger than everybody else because I skipped several grades. And I hated school because the teachers made me nuts because they asked us to do stupid things. So I was typically in some type of trouble. And my grades didn't always reflect my intellect, for sure. And it wasn't until a teacher in the 6th grade actually stopped to ask me some questions and had me tested. And my IQ at that point was like 187 or something crazy. And so they were like, whoa, let's skip you some grades, which totally mangled me and didn't help my social life, just saying. So I think my delightfulness, I don't know why you find me delightful, but I think that came at a later age.
Very good. So getting into healing grief and healing trauma.
Yeah.
So healing modalities such as meditation, yoga, breath work, tantra, I've heard you say these modalities don't work as powerfully as they used to and often only offer relief. They can even be unhelpful if you have a dysregulated nervous system. And most of us have dysregulated nervous systems. Yeah. So how do we know if we have a dysregulated enough nervous system to need to address it?
Well, you do. So unless you're living out in the wild somewhere. You're living a tribal life where you're barefoot on the ground, sitting on the ground, eating vegetables and meat and different things right off the earth type of thing. You're dysregulated. You use technology, you're dysregulated. You're in modern society, you're dysregulated. Sadly, it's because of all of the fact that we're not barefoot on the ground, the fact that we are using technology, the fact that we are looking at screens that bring our eyes closer together, not doing practices that we would normally, we're designed to spend 85% of our time outside. And if you're not doing that, you're dysregulated. So let's just make that the norm. And what that means is that your nervous system is not calibrated to be resilient like it's supposed to be. Let's say you walk out onto the street and you almost get hit by a car. A regulated nervous system takes that hit, has that shock, but within 20 minutes, it's reset back to normal. Most people today, if that happened to you, you'd be thinking about that all day long. You'd feel stressed all day long. You wouldn't breathe as much all day long because your nervous system's not resilient. It is already dysregulated. So when you take a hit on a dysregulated nervous system, you loop. And you'll spend a lot of time in that loop because your nervous system did not recover. It didn't start resilient, so it didn't recover. It was already dysregulated. So that's kind of what it means. It means that you're anxious. It means that you're probably not breathing most of the time. And that changes your chemistry. So your neurotransmitters are set to anxiety, and the flip side of that is depression. And that's where most people are living today. And what that has to do with breath work and ancient practices is as we become more interested in what is called alternative, though it wasn't alternative, it was the remedy. So I think alternative therapy is a ridiculous thing to say. But as we become more engaged in old ancient wisdoms of healing, breath work, like you said, yoga, meditation, we're finding that people are struggling to do it well. They're doing it and they're faking it a lot of times because everybody's doing it. So the cool kids do it and you all say you work. But I think most people are doing a meditation that I call trying to meditate meditation, where you're sitting there for your 30 minutes or whatever you're doing, and you're trying to do it. Even yoga teachers, meditation teachers that I teach, breathwork teachers will tell me, you're right, I'm not actually getting the benefit. They might get some relief, but not sustainable long-term healing. Because when you put a practice that was built for regulated nervous systems on top of a dysregulated nervous system, it doesn't work the same way.
Okay, let me interrupt you there, Tanya.
Yeah.
We're featuring a lot of modalities during the summit.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that none of those modalities will be as effective as they could be unless we first address our nervous system's regulation?
Absolutely. Which is sad and controversial. I understand a lot of people I'm getting kicked out of a lot of groups on Facebook and stuff right now with this information, except if I say this to you and to anybody, watch this, this will make sense. So 2,000, 3,000 years ago, people were grounded. Undoubtedly, right? They were living on the earth. Their feet were barefoot. They were eating naturally. There was no, none of this stuff that we have today. And these practices were created to help those people, those grounded people, look to the heavens and have hope that they could elevate their energy into the heaven. Like the lotus rising out of the mud, practices were created to help people raise their energy up, because that's what those people needed back then. If you took that same modality and drop it onto people that are already up in their heads and their energy's already too high and frantic and they're out of their bodies and ungrounded, and you give them that same modality, it doesn't work the same.
I see.
That just makes sense, right? I mean, how does that not make sense? We're up in our heads. We are ungrounded. We are not on the earth. We do not need to elevate our energy.
It makes sense. And from what I understand, and I know I researched you a bit, and from what I understand, you developed your own system, and it's because there's even though I think, let me ask you just this. You have a philosophy that brought upon the system you created. What is the philosophy? First, sell me on that.
Well, because I have an ancient Tantra lineage, right, means that I understand the foundations and the practices that are taught in breathwork, meditation, yoga. That's where all of that came from. And because I understand what it was created for, it's pretty easy to go, well, we can't do that anymore. That, and that my teacher, who's now long dead, said, you got to modernize this stuff. Nobody's going to go out and dump their guts in the Ganges River and then put them back in, or do all some of these crazy things that these energy modalities were doing. Nobody's going to do that today. But just thinking about the connection to earth, about energetic connection, and I don't mean it in the woo-woo way, even though that's fine. I mean it in the literally solid way of how we walk on the earth and live on the earth and eat and things like that. It's clear that they just don't work the same way. And then, well, data, because I'm all about data. I'm a scientist at heart. And so I started practicing not only on myself, as I have a lot of trauma that I've worked through, that all of the other modalities that I was trying, and that's why I got certified in them all, were not working. They just would give me relief, but I'd be back to square one, it felt like, at some other point. It would eke out somewhere else. My trauma program or symptom would show up somewhere else. So when I finally realized that really moving energy outward was what we needed, and started doing practices, renovating or restructuring practices to do that, it's not that I'm changing the practice, I'm changing the energy flow of the practice. Breathwork is important, meditation is important, yoga is important. But any master of it that understood the foundation of it and why it was used would change it the way I'm changing it. So it's not just that I'm that special, it's just that I understand the practice at the depth that I understand the practice.
Right. Okay, I understand. I'm following you. But what are you doing? I mean, are you taking aspects of different disciplines, kind of just mashing them together? Do you have a particular sequence involved? Like, is it a step-by-step kind of a thing?
Well, if there's what I call 5 and 8 systems.
Hey, before you go there, Tanya, tell me what your success rate for this, because people aren't going to be interested in your formula unless they know it's successful.
99% success rate. Basically, it doesn't work if you're a sociopath. I mean, and I've worked with sociopaths.
Now, I got to tell you, that's actually a hard to believe statistic. I mean, you have like some kind of data collected or some kind of testing, or is it just a colloquial 99%?
Thousands of testimonials. Like, if I work with somebody, they heal their trauma symptoms.
Wow.
That's just it, because I'm working with the body and these 5 and 8 systems that we all need to heal. So I'm working with the evolutionary design of our body and how it heals. So this is not like magic. It's not like, oh, I'm so special, because I've taught coaches this as well. Other people have the same success when they use this as I do. So it's really about understanding how the body and energy and chemistry works, and then using the healing tools that are innately in us the same way they're used to heal. Just because if the body's not healing, there's something keeping it stuck. We're designed to heal. We're designed to be resilient. We're designed to let go of trauma. And it's when things are stuck that we can't use that natural ability. So all I'm doing is setting up the body and the person and the chemistry up for success.
When I first met you, you gave me a sample, because I asked for a sample of what this is. And you gave me a sample, but I'll tell you what I liked about it. What I liked about it, it was very simple and very doable. Yeah. And I need both of those things to even get started in any kind of practice.
Everybody does.
So to give me either the example you gave me, which you probably don't remember, but give me an example. Give me a sample of what's simple and we can do right now to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, breath work, everybody pretty well has heard of breath work, but there's specific breath work that what we call down regulates the nervous system. And most of us need to down regulate our nervous systems. And so it's called vagus nerve breath, VAGUS. And it's an inhale to the count of 2 through the nose. So 1, 2, and then exhale through the mouth, like blowing out birthday candles without force, relaxed, for 8 count. So 4 times longer than you inhale. It's a short 1, 2, and an exhale. And that's what you just do. And it is, even when you just get 3 breaths into that, your body already feels more relaxed. That's simple. If you were to do that 5 minutes a day and then micro practices throughout the day, like you notice, ooh, I've stopped breathing. I feel stressed. This is anxious. And just do a few of those, your body goes, oh, everything's okay. And so I believe that short micro practices, short duration micro practices that are practiced consistently help re-regulate our nervous systems. We don't need to do hour-long practices. They're not, especially since most people aren't doing them well in an hour or a half an hour. I can build 4 or 5 5-minute practices in for somebody, and that's all they need, that 20 minutes to totally change. And it happens like magic. People are always like, well, I have a client doing one of these practices, and in about 5 weeks in, she's saying, I don't think anything's happening. And then she goes, oh, but I don't have road rage anymore. 20 years of road rage. We're not working on road rage, but road rage is gone. So my clients always tell me that it feels like magic, only because they're expecting something to happen while they're doing the practice, and they don't realize all the accumulation of what's happening in their chemistry and their nervous system behind the scenes.
Is there an average? I know everyone's different, but is there an average time span where people feel that difference?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, your clients feel like
there's stuff happening.
Wow.
Because the nervous system responds predictably. This, like I said, this is like the nervous system and chemicals and neurotransmitters. It works. It's not if it works, it always works. Now, when you're cognizant of it working, has to do with the healing that I help people do between their heads and their bodies. Most people have a narcissistic relationship. Their head's the narcissist and their body is the one that they're abusing. The body says, I'm hungry. You're like, shut up. You're too fat. We don't need to eat. I need to go to the bathroom. Just bear with it. You've got more work to do. I mean, there's so many things that happen, but that hooking up, getting that body wisdom relationship back in flow, the more faster that happens, the more people see all of the regulation changes that are happening. They'll just say, well, my kid was going off yesterday and I realized I just wasn't reacting to it like I usually do. What's happening? They're always mystified and they're always surprised because by the time people get to me, they've done everything under the sun. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe on things and many years of their life. And I'm like their last ditch effort. So they're always surprised when, wow, this works.
So once you get to that place where you realize it's working, do you have like I guess it's an ongoing practice. You'd have to do maintenance for that, right?
Yeah. So typically what happens is, I work with people my average client stays with me for a long time, but only because they're leveling up. They're through their trauma symptoms within usually, let's say a year. In my most stubborn cases, let's say a year, right? A year to get through all your trauma symptoms you've had for your whole life is not a long time. And these tools that you learn then, they're in your toolbox. And to just use them. Once you're regulated, you can keep regulated, right? So you might change up the toolbox a little bit. My goal is to hand people self-healing tools that they can use for the rest of their life so they're not dependent on anybody else in that regard. Because trauma is going to happen to us. Stuff's going to happen. And if you have the toolbox that you can use and it works, you're going to use them for the rest of your life. And so I've had clients I've been using my practices. I call them the practices. 37 years, 35 years or something like that.
I've heard you say in interviews that the very first step, other than, of course, regulating your nervous system, the very first step to get there is to trust yourself.
Building self, yeah.
What does that mean? Yeah, tell me what that means exactly.
Well, you hear a lot of people saying you have to have, self-love. Most people will tell you self-love is where you heal, right? Learn self-love. Well, first of all, it's not. It's self-commitment is the first step. Self-commitment by doing practices every single day. You do these practices 5 minutes, 7 days a week. And if you're not doing them, we find out that you don't actually have commitment to yourself. because it's a 5-minute practice. So building that commitment to yourself builds self-respect, builds self-trust. Once we have self-trust, then we can go on to learning self-love and other things. But that self-trust, the ability to trust yourself, when you say I'm going to do something, you do it. You're not in conflict with the constant self-deception. My TEDx talk, first one's on the art of self-honesty, right? Practicing self-honesty, because we lie to ourselves all the time. So therefore we don't trust ourselves. And if we don't trust ourselves, we're never going to think we're good characters or love ourselves. It's impossible to do that. We're going to think of ourselves as liars, and nobody likes a liar. So we can't even like ourselves. So building that self-trust because of the commitment of doing these practices over and over again, consistently putting yourself first, builds that commitment and self-trust, which then goes on to, when you say anything to anybody, you believe it. You want to quit sugar, you just go, I'm not eating sugar anymore. Your body believes it. Your subconscious mind believes it, and you're good to go. Like, I can quit sugar. I quit sugar years ago. So any of that is easy. That helps people with addiction issues, is pretty powerful. These work really great on addiction issues.
Let me ask you this. This practice, the short micro practice that you showed me originally, it had to do with widening.
Mm-hmm.
That tickled me. I want you to just tell me what that is again.
Absolutely. So energetically, if you're doing practices like breath work, meditation, things like that, you're taught to do this in a linear stream, an up and down stream, right? The ancient practices have that. And what happens when you do that is you narrow everything, you constrict. And right now we don't need constriction, we need widening. So by taking your hands, and I can't stand up right here, but if you take your hands and you drop them out by your hips, you can do this sitting down or standing up. Your hands are facing your hips like this, out at your side. And then you just think about your hands. All you're doing is putting your vision, energy, focus on your hands. And when you feel your hands, instantly, and it's 100% of the time, your energy follows that widening and your entire nervous system downregulates. You are essentially meditating, just doing that. The second you drop your hands there and you can feel your hands, you just think about that space between your hands, your entire energetic system has widened to a circle around you, which brings all your energy down, grounds you. We're not shoving it down into the earth. We're bringing it out to the side. We need to widen. And so that is a very quick, like I said, 100% of the time works way to calm your nervous system down and start a meditation practice. You can only do it for a few minutes if you want.
And so that's what I would expect if I was a client of yours, that kind of practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you tailoring practices to me specifically, or this is kind of a universal, this works for all nervous systems?
I have a set of practices, the core practices that work, unless you're a sociopath, they work on everybody. And in fact, people that I've gone out to places where people are regulated and use some of these practices, they really love them too. Like, it makes a huge difference even in there. So this works on everybody I've ever tried it on. And that's been a lot of people. And then there are custom practices depending on the circumstances somebody's in, because sometimes there are people that have certain disabilities or medical conditions or things like that, that we really have to take and make the practice very customized to what they're specifically going through. So yeah, I mean, I have like 100 tools at least, or 100 practices at least that I can pull out to give people, but there's the core practices that everybody gets to start, because it basically, like I said, changes your chemistry, which changes your nervous system, changes you physically. So those 5 and 8 systems I was talking about, energy, chemistry, physical, mental, right, emotional, they all need healing, and they have to happen at the same time, or one will keep knocking the other out. And that was what was wrong with all the modalities that I was going to. They were very specific to one thing or another. Yeah.
You've also spoken about various disorders, diseases you yourself have had, and you've treated with your own tools. So
yeah,
Has that worked? What have you had? Has it gotten better?
Well, first of all, based on my um, diagnoses of autism, ADHD, OCD, and a bunch of other letters, nobody that knows me would know any of that. So those traits or symptoms aren't prevalent in my life. Nervous system regulation has helped so many people that I know that have been diagnosed with ADHD. They actually just had nervous system dysregulation or trauma symptoms. And as soon as you clear up the trauma symptoms and the nervous system dysregulation, all of a sudden, all of those other symptoms, neurodivergent symptoms, actually are gone. So I think everybody needs to heal their trauma symptoms and their nervous system first before they grab onto their diagnosis. So my traits that I had that didn't allow me to interact with humans the way I do now and animals, my practices helped that. I had hypothyroidism. That's not considered curable. Well, my lab work shows I don't have it anymore after being medicated for 20 years. Fibromyalgia, gone. This thing called vestibulitis, which is very intimate detail to share, but it's basically inflammation of the vaginal vestibule. It's supposedly incurable, gone. And I keep going through. I'm hearing idiopathic peripheral neuropathy right now. So anytime that I have something that is a problem, I fix it using these tools because the body's designed to heal. I've had people, it's with cancer, their cancer goes away.
You yourself had cancer at one point, no?
Yeah, I only had a 25% chance of being here right now.
Wow. And you dealt with it yourself, or did you have to have also chemo?
Yeah, I did chemo. I was never going to do chemo. And it's interesting that I decided to do chemo because I didn't have a specific tumor that I could keep track of to know whether or not what I was doing was working. So I'm not adverse, like I am to holistic medicine, right? And eating well and all the rest of that. But I'm also not adverse to using medication or things that I need to use while I'm working on healing things. So I believe that there's a lot of things out there at our disposal, right? The best thing is to use the best strategies for what you need right now to get to where you need to go. But drugs haven't healed most of my stuff.
Yeah, I have a bit of a prejudice against pharmaceuticals in general, but that's another summit.
Absolutely.
So now I understand. I saw your bio talks about you also have animal clients, but I don't understand how you could tell an animal to relax. How do you do that?
Oh, they're so much easier. Well, animals, and specifically, I've worked with exotic animals, but horses and parrots and dogs have been the mainstay of that, right? And in fact, some of my best teachers, because horses have the largest emotional center of an animal, a domesticated animal that we interact with. And if you are somebody who's trying to make something happen on a horse, they're a herd animal. They're collaborative. You need to be in collaboration when you're working with them. And so working on energetic healing with horses or somatic exercises, moving the body, doing things like that, they'll let you know really quick whether it's working or not, or you're trying to interfere with them and what would naturally happen with them. And so they allowed me to become a much more subtle practitioner and actually test out some of these modalities to see if they work. So there's somatic practices that I teach people too, not just breath work, but like position of hands on their body and things like that. So I can mimic that on a horse by placing my hands on their body in a specific way. And then just being there and watching the change. A horse that's anxious will have its head up and its ears back, and you look tense and feel tense, right? Could kick at you, snap at you. They're in physical pain. They're not happy. It's clear. Placing my hands on a horse within a few minutes in the right place, their head drops, the body relaxes, they'll start yawning, their ears hang sideways, their lip falls down in total relaxation, like somebody just drugged them. And so there's no placebo effect happening there. It's super clear that something is going on.
Now that's your own energy has to be in a certain spot, I would think, for you to affect that, or no, it's all in your hands.
It absolutely. So your breath, so you're literally driving that breath, right? Yeah. So your breath is going to be doing what you want the animal to do. Your energy needs to be open and clear and streaming. If you're holding back or trying to do, that's why they taught me so much, is because I'm going to walk up and go, now I'm going to make you do this. And the horse is like, yeah, I don't think so. So having to get into that kind of neutral space
Right.
that allows the flow of energy without showing up to do something to them. So that's collaboration. You're working with them. But here's the interesting part that I think is important. The reason that I teach people self-healing tools versus work on them myself is because of that very thing. When you work with somebody else, you're in a dynamic. And in that dynamic, you're responding differently than you would with yourself. And this is what animals taught me, is that if I can set them up for a change and then take myself out of the equation, they heal faster because they're not in a dynamic with me. So instead of me being the hands-on, because I used to do hands-on work with people, instead of doing that, I pivoted to teach people how to be their own healers with their own tools, because they're in a dynamic with themselves then and not with me, which complicates everything. You find somebody attractive, it changes how you react. You find somebody unattractive, it changes how you react. The energy of one is the same frequency as the other, it changes how everything is. So going to practitioners changes the outcome of what would happen when you do your own work. And that was really pivotal for me. And that was taught to me by animals.
Now, wouldn't what's good for an animal work with people too?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so could I work with somebody and remove myself from the equation? To a certain extent, but I can't remove pheromones in the air. I can't remove triggers. Let's say, I have a certain setup in my space that triggers somebody visually or chemically or smell or some way. Most people in their own space still have triggers, but less than coming into somebody else's space. So I could go to other people's places, which I used to. I come to you, but I'm still bringing me. So putting the tools in people's hands themselves is the fastest, best way that has the least problems. I'm not saying you can't work on people. I'm saying it's better, especially in the beginning, getting their own solidity, their self-trust, their self-love. Once you have all that, you're different when you go to somebody else.
Gotcha. Okay. So this might be off topic. I'm not sure, but it's on my mind and I have to get it out there. Let's say my wife is a nervous wreck and I want to calm her down, but she's not going to go to any practitioner. Yeah. She's not going to learn meditation.
Right.
I want to be able to put my hands on her. Mm-hmm. Jesus-like. I want to be able to put my hands on her and calm her down.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah, if you have the right training. But once again, you may be part of the reason that she's a nervous wreck. So you show up.
I'm sure it is.
You show up to be Jesus-like and put your hands on her. She turns around and slaps you. So can you, if somebody's an energy master, they're able to create what's called neutrality, meaning they are not involved in their energy. I had a hummingbird once that landed on my hand. And I remember sucking all the energy up to my shoulder, right? See if I could be a branch, but branches have energy too, but a neutral, kind of a non-thing. And the hummingbird stayed, even though we were outside. It could leave. It was healthy, didn't look sick, until I trickled my energy back down, just in a slow little trickle. And as soon as it got to his feet, he shivered and fluffed and then took off. And I was like, well, that's curious. Animals are great teachers. Nature's our best teachers. So could you learn to be in such neutrality that you weren't shoving your energy into somebody? Yes, but you'd still have pheromones in the air. You'd still have visual triggers. So the person would have to be okay with what you were doing.
I heard a story, I heard another interview of yours where you told a story about you being called to treat a horse, and the owner of the horse paid for the hour, and after 5 minutes, he said, you were done. And
Yeah.
he had a problem with that. But
Yeah, I know.
what was that? How could you be done in 5 minutes?
Well, the horse was done. The horse was done. So when you're watching an animal, even a person, like when you're working with people through trauma, let's say verbally coaching people, there's a time when their body signals that they're done. And either they're done because they've received as much as they're going to receive at that moment, or they're blocked and can't go on. So just having that 50-minute time is it's arbitrary, right? I mean, it's arbitrary to have sessions that have time limits because the body doesn't work that way. The nervous system doesn't work that way. Yeah. So they were angry because it's like, oh, you're going to, but I paid for this amount of money, this time. But if you're looking at the horse is standing there, head's drooping, everything's done. It taken that huge release breath that animals do when they're done. And me working on him wasn't going to do anything more except irritate him or not give him this, because we heal in this emptiness. We heal during this space, not while we're doing the thing, but in the moments of silence and nothing afterwards. So that's hard for people to fathom because we're doers. We want to I'm poking this should feel better now, right? If I do this for 50 minutes, surely it's going to be even better. Arbitrary time frame. When really maybe I just needed to touch this, feel what the energy in the body does, release it, and be gone.
Gotcha. So now I'm just going to ask you for some just good old fashioned, we're winding down now to the end of the interview. And I want to ask you for some just good old fashioned Tanja Diamond wisdom. By the way, if the audience is wondering why I feel familiar or you seem familiar to me, it's because you are a TEDx organizer, as I said in the beginning in the introduction. You were my TEDx organizer for when I did a TED Talk. And I got to know you and your practice. I've known you for about 6 months or so. And the way that you describe what's happening, it's very compelling. I think I told you that. It's very compelling. So I think I do want to try some of these techniques in your practice. I'm already a client of yours for business reasons. I think I'm going to become a life strategist, I guess, client of yours also. Here's the wisdom I'm going to ask of you for. So, state of the world, anyone can finish that sentence, the state of the world, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty horrendous right now. So, do you think how is this affecting us? What should we do about it right now? What can we do if we don't have, until we see you, for example? What do you suggest? Any just wisdom, Tanja wisdom about how to survive, how to live in our current world?
Yeah. Stop watching the news. Step one. As a collective, yeah, the world. So there are people who are saying, "Oh, we're in the great phase of the resurrection of energy." You'll have those people that are thinking, "Yay, we're about to turn it all around, indigo children, da da da." And I'm the most practical woo-woo person you'll ever meet, right? As an energy master, but I like practicality. We've hit the tipping point of way too many things. Child porn is the biggest industry on the planet, right? Our system, our ecology is trashed. We're losing, frogs and other species at an alarming rate, right? So we're in trouble. What can we do about that? Well, we certainly shouldn't be adding to the burden of the dysregulation. We are clearly dysregulated. The planet is clearly dysregulated, and we do have an impact on that because we are all connected energetically. The more we stress and the more dysregulated we become, the more we impact things directly around us and even deeper. Like I sit in a treetop. There's 3 stories up, I'm in a tree forest, right? And I know that when I'm feeling great, everything out here outside of me is doing great. We can feel that, the wisdom of the tree, the hummingbirds that fly by when they're out of food, they come and sit right in front of me here in the window and bug me. There's communication happening all the time. So our responsibility, and I feel like our life purpose, here's the million dollar question, what's my life purpose, is self-management. I know that doesn't sound sexy at all, but the reality is when we are self-managed, when we heal our chemistry and our nervous system, we connect in the world and with other people in a harmonious way, in a healthy, resilient way. And the more of us that are doing that, the more we impact everything around us. Just like when we're not that way, we impact everything around us. Our kids are more intense. Our animals don't work as well. Our gardens don't flourish. All of those things are true when we're sending out energy or things that are dysregulated, right? So absolutely. One of the first things is that vagus nerve breath. If you just take the vagus nerve breath that I gave you today and you take this meditation of your hands out and you spend 5 minutes doing each every day, 7 days a week without fail, you start to learn and bring that self-commitment to yourself. Self-commitment to you means that you put yourself and that healing life purpose forefront. You start changing the dynamic of your family. You start changing the dynamic of your community. You start changing the dynamic of the world. So should we all decide to make our life purpose self-management, we have a chance, maybe not of resurrecting or creating a tipping point that changes. I think we might be beyond that. But we do still change the quality of our sphere. And that does make a difference. It makes a difference in how you walk in the world, how you live in the world, the quality of your life. And that quality of your life will resonate out. If enough of us do it, who knows? I'm not I don't believe in world peace in the way a lot of people do, because we're actually created from chaos. And so a little bit of chaos is good. But I do think we have too much of it right now, and we can each take responsibility for our section of the world with it, and really lean into this self-management as your life purpose beyond what other things you're going to do. And I have to tell you, it doesn't sound sexy, but my life is pretty awesome. So just saying.
Very good. Well, that's a perfect note to end on. So tell me this, if people want to know more about you and your work, what do they do? Where do they find you?
Well, if they're specifically interested in this idea of trauma symptom recovery and resetting, there's Recover Your Life, which is recoveryoulife.com, or yourlife.com, is my website that there has some free videos that teach you about these 5 and 8 systems and what this all means. So they have a little bit more. You can sign up there and get some free videos on that to start that journey. Of course, finding out about me is pretty easy. If you know how to spell my name right, I'm on how many pages of Google? 20. Tanja Diamond. Yeah. Not to be confused with the porn star that has an I think there. And so just look me up. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm kind of everywhere. You'll find me. I have some books out that you can look at as well. The Tantra of Breath, of Conscious Breath. The Tantra of Conscious Breath is a great book to really get you started on the breathwork path, to understand that obviously we're born breathing, right? And we take our first breath and we leave the earth taking our last breath. Breath is one of the most critical things that you need, the right breath.
Wow. I feel like we could do a whole summit on that.
Probably I have. There are some of those, I think.
Tanja, thank you so much for being with us today. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I love the fact that you're like doing this and you were like, let's do this together. Yay.
Okay. All right. So long, everybody.